we're ready to roll. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us this afternoon at the Cali District Innovation Webinar. We are the District Innovation Hub within Cali. I'll tell you more about that in a minute. You are joining us today for Climate Literacy Principles and Guidelines, and we have quite the lineup here with you today. We've got Nate Ivy from Fremont Unified School District, Jerry Song from LA Unified School District, and Ronnie Jones from 10 Strands. So we're going to jump right in and tell you a little bit about what's happening today. So Jerry, if we can go to the next slide. My name is Tim Baird. I am the co-chair of the District Innovation Hub. Glo Harwood from Laguna Beach is the other co-chair. She's waving at you on screen right now. And again, we just want to welcome you. This is part of our District Innovation Hub webinar series. Next slide, Jerry. One of the things we like to do is see where everyone is joining from. So in the chat, we have a place for you to go to the Padlet and just please put in your information. Tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're from. And we will add it to our list of attendees to our webinar series. It's nice to see we're getting a great representation from all over the state. So thanks again for joining us today. Next one, Jerry. So we are the District Innovation Hub. We work with district folks. This would be teachers, principals, directors, superintendents, and everyone else out there that works in a school district or works with a school district. We work for the California Environmental Literacy Initiative team, and they are supported by 10 Strands from up in the Bay Area. You can see our goals on the screen. These are goals that we've had consistent now for, I think, around 5 years or so. I'm not going to read them all to you, but we're all about helping districts come together and do this very important work around environmental literacy and sustainability. And again, thank you to those of you just joining us. We are just about ready to get into the content of this, and I'm just giving you some background now on who we are and why we do this work. Next slide, Jerry. So we do believe in a systems approach in Cali and in the District Innovation Hub. One of the systems that we utilize to help this work is the Green Ribbon 3 pillars. If you've not worked with the Green Ribbon program here in California, it's a great way to help you do your climate action plan or any of the sustainability work that you're doing in your district. And you can see the pillars there: reducing environmental impact and cost. Pillar number 2, the health and wellness of students and staff. And pillar number 3, environmental and sustainability education and green career pathways. That's one of the frameworks we use. We also use the 4 Cs whole systems framework. This was put together by Andra Yagoan up north in the Bay Area, and wonderful, wonderful framework. It involves campus, curriculum, community, and culture. You can see some similarities there. And then the framework at the top is the Green Schools National Network. I do some work with them as well. And you can see their 4 impact systems, which look very similar to what you're seeing in the other ones. Bottom line, all of this is that this is not just about one thing. It is a series of systems that work together to help you create a sustainable school and school district. Next slide, please, Jerry. So here's what we're going to do. We are in our opening right now, and we are going to get you started. And then we are going to get a chance to go through some really wonderful presentations around climate literacy principles and guidelines. We're going to give you some district examples and see some state curriculum resources, which I'm really excited to see myself. And then what I really love about this webinar series is that we will talk to you pretty much from 4 to 5, but from 5 to 5:30, we're going to have a chance to hear from you. You're going to go into breakout rooms if you choose to stay with us and really get a chance to share what's happening and questions you might have and go deeper into the material shared. So lots of good things coming. All right, Jerry. So as I said, we have 3 wonderful speakers for you today. Nate Ivy, he's an instructional coach with Fremont Unified School District. Nate has been a co-chair of this committee. He actually runs our webinar series, and we're so happy to have his leadership on this work. And he will be our first speaker today. Jerry Song, also on our District Innovation Hub. Jerry is the STEAM coordinator for Los Angeles Unified School District, doing some really great work there. And we know that we have a number of his climate champions online with us today. So welcome back, those of you that were here last month, and hopefully we've got some additional ones this month. So thank you, Jerry. And Ronnie Jones is the Director of Curriculum at 10 Strands. Really excited to hear the work that Ronnie and her team have been doing. So let's jump right in. Nate.
Great, thanks. I think the impetus for this webinar today is this driving question of what does high quality climate literacy learning look like? Climate has been, on all of our minds. Our students have been demanding more access to climate literacy. It's a cultural moment. It's an environmental moment, and it's all of us are now realizing that we have climate stories to tell, and that climate change is not something happening far away, only affecting polar bears. It's something that's affecting all of us in pretty dramatic ways, and sometimes offering us really inspirational opportunities to engage with each other and do really meaningful work. So today that'll be kind of what we're looking at is what are some of the tools and resources and examples that help us think about what does high quality climate literacy learning look like. Next slide. Part of the story is that a number of school districts in California have passed climate literacy resolutions, calling on their district to ensure that every student has access to climate literacy instruction. You can see the timeline of districts there. Polina is dropping in the chat a link to where you can actually go and read some of these resolutions and see the goals of these districts. But nearly 700,000 students in California attend climate literacy districts. There was another wave that kind of preceded this of climate action resolutions that districts passed, seeking to reduce environmental impacts, and often included a climate component, a climate learning component. So this number of students who are in districts that have made a commitment to climate literacy or climate change education or climate impact reduction is likely much larger than this nearly enormous 700,000, nearly 700,000 student number. Let's go on the next slide. In addition to these districts that have passed local resolutions for climate literacy, the state of California in 2023 passed climate science requirements for all students in the state. So climate had always been a part of our NGSS pathways. AB 285 makes it really explicitly clear that in the sciences, students must be learning about climate in age-appropriate ways. Our County Office of Education Hub, through the California Environmental Literacy Initiative, put together some really great guidance on how to approach this, and Paulina has put that in the chat. One other thing about this is there was a lot of lobbying encouraging the author of that bill to think beyond climate science. Unfortunately, that law only included science. And I think one of the things that we've realized as we think about high quality climate literacy instruction is that it really needs to be interdisciplinary. It took all of our human talents and disciplines to get into this mess, and it's going to take all of our human talents and disciplines to get out of it. Next slide. One thing that's really exciting in the last year is that there have been some updated national guidance and frameworks released. We'll talk about two of them today. On the left, guidelines for excellence from the North American Association for Environmental Education were released in November. We'll take a look at those. But first, we're going to take in a moment a look at the climate literacy principles that were put together by the U.S. Global Change Research Project. Interestingly enough, as I was preparing for this last night, I was checking all of the links, and the link that I had for this document returned this dead database. This is a project of NOAA and the federal government. The web page had been scrubbed a little while ago, but the database had been including this climate literacy principle. So anyway, join us all in reading a banned book, and what they say about the banned books is that's where all the good stuff is. So there's some really awesome and compelling ideas and direction in the updated climate literacy principles, and we'll get into it a little bit so you can get as excited about them as I am. And even though maybe it doesn't exist on a federal website, it's going to exist in our hearts and minds and in our practice. And I think we can all keep this living document. I had downloaded the document before it disappeared. And I think in the chat, Polina has shared the link. LOL, download a copy for yourself. So let's go on to the next slide, and we'll dive into taking a look at the shift in the climate literacy principles. NOAA and the U.S. Global Change Research Project in 2009 wrote an initial version of the climate literacy principles. And curriculum writers and districts and teachers and educators looked to that guidance to kind of understand what climate literacy meant and use that document for the 15 years that it was current. In the last 5 or 10 years, there was a big push that there needed to be some changes. And the U.S. Global Change Research Project did listening sessions around the country. Thousands of people contributed, scientists, educators, families, community members, all put in the new ideas about what climate literacy needs to be to really meet the needs of the future. So to kind of help us think about this, what I'd like you to do as an exercise is I'd like you to just look at the covers of these two documents. The 2009 document is on the left. The updated 2024 version is on the right. Take a look at the pictures, take a look at the words. What do you notice as different between just the covers of these two documents? And what do you infer that means about what's new in the 2024 document compared to 2009? So I'm going to give you a moment to think. I would love for people to type their observations into the chat. So I noticed that. I see that in 2009, it looked like this. In 2024, it looks like this. I infer that maybe this means X, Y, or Z. So I'll be quiet for a moment, but I would love to see some action in the chat. What do you notice, and what does that make you infer about what might be different in the 2024 version of climate literacy principles compared to 2009? I'll call out some that I'm seeing as they come in. I notice children. This means children are part of climate and climate solutions. The old was for individuals and communities. The new is for educators, communicators, and decision makers. I noticed that people are there in 2024 versus 2009. There are no people. In 2024, there's a call to action represented by different types of people being shown. The chat is really bubbling here. All people, advocacy. 2024 includes decision makers. The old is a beautiful climate and does not seem like there is a need for change. These are all really great observations. I think the pictures help communicate that story, but so do the words and titles that you're noticing here. 2024 has children looking at and interpreting data. It has people living in communities doing things in the environment and to protect the environment. And then 2009 is kind of absent of people. Another shift that I just want to call out is that 2009, the subtitle was Essential Principles of Climate Science. So it was very science forward. It was a science focused document. And 2024 is Essential Principles for Understanding and Addressing Climate Change. So it doesn't exclusively call out science. It doesn't exclude science, but it kind of raises this issue that these are principles that you can use maybe in all disciplines for tackling this challenge. So let's move on to the next slide, and I'll tell you a little bit about, we'll take a little bit of a look at some other shifts and how this is structured. One of the things that both documents do is they give a definition or a description of a climate literate person. They're really similar. Climate literate people understand the principles of Earth's climate system. And in 2024, climate literate people also understand the options to address human-caused climate change. In 2009, it was know how to access scientifically credible information. In 2024, it's really about how do we recognize it, how do we find it, and how do we use it. There are some other minor updates here, but it's really getting at this idea that climate literate people understand how the climate system works and ways that they can engage with it, that they can communicate effectively and they can recognize accurate information. Next slide. The 2009 principles are a list of science principles. The sun is the primary source of energy for Earth's climate system. Climate is regulated by complex interactions. Life on Earth depends on and is shaped by and affects climate. Climate varies over space and time. Human activities are impacting the climate system. It's very science forward and kind of a study of understanding what's happening. The feedback that NOAA and the US Global Change Research Project got was that this needs to go way beyond science and really move beyond just understanding the problem and working on addressing the problem. So you still see science in here. You still see climate principles in here. You see a statement on how do we know? How do scientists understand things? What kind of data is available? The principles talk about beyond science. We also have indigenous knowledge, we have historical knowledge, we have lived experience that are all part of how we all understand this. There's a section where it talks specifically about climate science, but then it goes more in depth into the causes, the impacts, the disparate challenges among communities. It talks specifically about the idea of adaptation, that we have climate impacts now that we need to prepare ourselves to live through. And it continues to talk about mitigation, which is reducing future harm. The one that catches my heart the most is that it explicitly includes the idea of hope and urgency, that this is as much of a technical challenge, as much as a logistical challenge. It's a big social, emotional challenge for us to find the will, the determination, and the energy to do this work. Next slide. So you can see a little bit more. I'll pause here for a moment and give you a chance to just kind of read through some of that subtext on the current principles. I'm going to get a drink of water and clear my cough while you take a look at that. So just real quick in the chat, type the number of the principle that right now you're kind of most excited about learning more about. I think we need all 8 of these to have a really comprehensive approach and buckets of effort for organizing how we approach this with educating students and engaging our communities. I'm seeing a lot of 8, that hope and urgency, also catching other people's hearts. 5, thinking about equity. 7, really thinking about mitigation. 6, adaptation. So, a lot of these are kind of the new focus beyond just understanding climate to really doing something about these challenges. Let's move on to the next slide. The document is excellent in many ways. I think the headline of the excellence is that it is about thinking about solutions, but it also provides, even before it gets into the principles themselves, it provides a lot of background information. So if you're kind of a novice at thinking about climate education or climate literacy instruction, if you are feeling like you don't know all the things you need to know, there's some really good background information in here that defines terms and gives information you need. When you get into each of the principles itself, then you'll see kind of these sub indicators or these categories of ideas in each section that give more nuance and more detail to each topic. So for example, on adaptation, you see A, adapting and building resilience to climate impacts in all aspects of society to save lives. You see in C, adaptation will become more expensive and less effective as the planet warms. So you get a sense of kind of the challenge and the work that we need to do to really understand each of these categories. Okay, so that's the climate literacy principles. Let's shift gears a little bit, Jerry, and head on to the next slide. which is thinking about the NAAE guidelines for excellence. So just before diving into this, one thing I hope that will happen is that as educators and publishers and curriculum writers are trying to think about what it means to produce high quality, they'll look to these documents because I think there's really good guidance in both the climate literacy principles and in these guidelines for excellence. The North American Association for Environmental Education, Mexico, Canada, United States, largely serves environmental educators, outdoor educators, but it also provides a lot of resources for formal TK to 12 teachers as well. They have a whole series of guidelines about what does excellence look like, what does standards look like in materials and outdoor education and professional development. And their most recent guideline was released in November, again through a similar process of collaboration and educators from around the country trying to figure out like what are the most important recommendations or guidelines or things to keep in mind for climate action and justice. So let's take a look at what this is a little bit on the next slide. The guidelines for excellence, this document is about 180 pages. It goes into really fine detail on each of these recommendations or guidelines, but it also includes incredible background information. So the federal document's about 50 pages, gives a really good sense. There's some just amazing resources in this document. Like one, I grew up in New Mexico, so it has the democratic principles of Pueblo societies and how to think about how you might apply those in decision making in all communities. But it shines a light on an indigenous community and how they navigate this. What I'd like you to do, I'll read kind of the headlines of each of the principles, but then I'm going to give you a minute to kind of look at this slide again and identify which characteristic and maybe which indicator of a characteristic catches your attention. So the first characteristic is establishing a collaborative, welcoming, and responsive learning environment. And that's pretty universal across all of the environmental education documents. But think about why it might be so important to lay that foundation or set that foundation for the type of classroom where climate literacy and students working together on solutions would be. Characteristic number 2 is developing the knowledge and skills to foster climate action. So again, very action forward, thinking about the need for understanding and also developing practice. You can read through some of those sub-indicators there and think about which ones of those are calling your attention. Where do you already perceive that you have strengths as an educator or in your school or in your system? And where are you seeing some opportunities to add something to your toolkit? Characteristic number 3 is attention on climate emotions. NAAE came to a similar place that the U.S. Global Research Change Project came to on the hope and urgency front, is that this work presents a lot of challenges, but it also can fill us with these really powerful emotions, both of the sadness on one hand, but also the hope and excitement on the other. So how do we recognize and name and acknowledge these climate emotions? How do we really help to build real hope and not false hope among our students? And how do we give them a sense of power? Characteristic number 4 is that this work needs to be really locally focused and community driven. I think a lot about the early climate instruction that came out that was often about disasters far away. The polar bear on the ice floe is kind of the image that was in front of students when I was first starting out as a teacher. And it felt, kind of far away and disconnected. This work is really important because climate is affecting us all in our daily lives. Like I said earlier, we all have a climate story to tell. So we really need to be looking at these locally focused and community-driven solutions. And then the 5th characteristic is to really support students in civic engagement for climate action. A lot of the research is showing that action is helping all of us to overcome some of the anxiety and fear we have. But some of the more nuanced research that's been coming out lately is that it's collective action, working together with other people, that really helps us through these challenges and helps us develop a sense of power. I think we've all seen the messaging that you as an individual are responsible, you as an individual should do this, that, or the other thing, recycle this or buy that car. And it's kind of an overwhelming amount of responsibility to do this all by yourself. And students, especially teenagers, have pretty strong BS detectors. And when they think about their individual power compared to the sense of the problem, sometimes they go into a stance of apathy as a protective stance against caring too much about the challenge. But when we're working together with others, our energy gets reinforced. We're in it together. We support each other, and we can see that our collective effort has a big impact. So, kind of going back to 685,000 students in California are in districts that have passed climate literacy resolutions. We are not powerless when we think about the contribution we can make as a group. So just take a minute, take a look at those characteristics, and then again in the chat, is there a characteristic or a indicator that catches your attention in this moment? Tim, thank you for that. Locally focused and community driven. Number 2, gaining the knowledge and skills. 4 and 5, civic engagement. Great. Thank you. There's a lot in here that's really good and really exciting. And I think, if you've been kind of feeling around and not knowing exactly what climate literacy is or what you're supposed to do or how to make sense of it or how to organize your thinking around it, the climate literacy principles and the climate literacy guidelines can help you get oriented for making decisions in your personal classroom, in your academic department, in your school building, in your district. So let's take a look at one of these characteristics just in a little bit more detail. We won't go into the entire document, but I want to give you a sense of how this is organized and what it looks like. So let's go to the next slide. The next slide just kind of pulls to give you a sense of what it looks like as the document describes each characteristic. So characteristic number 2, the knowledge and skills to foster climate action. One that I wanted to highlight is one set of knowledge and skills that you need to foster climate action is you need to understand the human systems related to climate change. Again, thinking back to that 2009 document, when we were thinking about understanding, the knowledge and skills to understand climate, it was more like, how does the climate system work? How does science work? How does the geosphere and hydrosphere work? To really tackle this problem, we really need to understand how human systems related to climate change work. So you can see, there's a description of what that means, and then there are indicators of what is happening in classrooms and in learning contexts where students are growing in this area. So students might be analyzing historical, ethical, cultural, geographic, economic, and social political relationships to further understand climate impacts and how these impacts are unevenly distributed across communities. They might be understanding the importance of civic engagement and how policies related to climate change are made and implemented locally and nationally. They might also investigate how communities with climate justice concerns understand local climate impacts and build systems to support community resilience. So I really love, that it's thinking both about the science, but also the social science and the human systems, and really trying to equip us with all the tools we're going to need to be effective in preparing students to make meaningful change. All right, so we're going to shift gears a little bit. These are part of the story of what quality looks like. Is what guidance can we get from these documents? We want to shift now to give some examples of how 2 districts, Fremont Unified and LA, have been stumbling through, and then we'll take a look at some state resources. So Just a quick story for Fremont. We passed a resolution. It was led by students. They brought it to the board and during the distance learning year. We spent some time looking at our values and vision, put together a roadmap, developed some lesson plans. And right now we're realizing in the past we had a problem of there weren't a lot of resources available that we thought would be useful. And now there's just this flood of resources coming on the market that it's hard for us to make decisions about what's good and what's not good. So we're working on developing some tools to help teachers identify quality. Let's go on to the next slide. I'll give you a little insight into this. Our district is about 32,000 students. Our resolution asks us to define climate literacy. We have a prior webinar where a couple of the students who helped develop this resolution kind of speak to the student leadership piece. Next slide. Again, we focused on our values first. So this preceded the 2024 tools from US Global Research Change and NAAE. We knew that we wanted our effort to be action-oriented. We knew it needed to be equitable, that we couldn't have some schools doing this and other kids not having chances. We knew from the beginning that it couldn't only be a science problem. We needed everybody thinking about this. We needed an integrated approach. In our district, we were really worried about age appropriateness. Like, I don't want to tell a second grader that like the planet is really about to die. Like I don't want them with the images of polar bears. I want them to connect to and love nature. I want them to explore and wonder. I want them to develop a sense of their own power. So we really tried to make a map that attended to that. And then for our community, and I think every community in California, we really wanted to be culturally proficient. One example of that, one of the students who led the resolution is her family's from India, and she got really concerned and interested about climate on a family trip to India where she saw the impacts of drought and then came on a family trip to visit some relatives in the Modesto area during the drought years and saw the impacts of drought in California and really had this moment of understanding how big of a global problem it was and how much it was impacting the people she cared about. Next slide. This is part of, lots of things happening in our district, efforts to reduce waste, electrify buses, improve professional learning. Next slide. One thing that I think, we were really excited about is we put together a climate literacy definition. What does it mean to be climate literate? And it looks a lot like the early federal definition. It looks a lot like, things that were available. But one thing that we really wanted in there was we wanted the social emotional capacity. So this was in 2022. We added social emotional learning to our definition of climate literacy. We took a look at the standards, frameworks, and adopted curriculum that we had to try to identify some themes. And then on the next slide, Jerry, next slide, the other direction. We kind of put all of that into thinking to organize grade band experiences. So in TK to 2, we really want our kids connecting to, exploring, and understanding nature and establishing some habits for protecting nature. Grades 3 through 5, kids have some more cognitive capacity, the ability to see some bigger pictures and read to learn. So we wanted them to think about some of the systems that show up in the standards. In 3rd grade, we saw a lot of weather connections. In 4th grade, we saw a lot of energy connections. And in 5th grade, we saw a lot of water connections. 6th grade is all about people on the planet, trying to navigate those awkward years and think about what sphere of influence do I have when I'm trying to understand world history in grade 6 and 7, and for the first time climate science in grade 6, while I'm also navigating being 13 years old. There's a lot going on there. And then 9 through 12, we are developing service learning projects for adaptation, mitigation, and justice, and also opportunities for students to explore college, career, and civic life. So that's Fremont. I want to turn it over to my good friend Jerry Song to give us all an overview of LA's amazing efforts and the ways that they've been framing this work. So I think, Jerry, this is where you take it away.
All right. Thanks, Nate. And Nate, thank you for sharing this abundance of information, despite the fact that you're feeling under the weather. So I hope you feel better. And yeah, again, thank you. And I just wanted to say hi to all the LAUSD climate literacy champions in this room who are just doing an incredible amount of work of leading climate literacy at their school sites. I just love, listening to just again how students are being put in the center stage, and again they're being empowered to really make an impact in this world. And again, and it can't be done without the incredible work of these champions and the teachers in the classrooms. And if we have LAUSD educators here who are not champions, welcome. And again, just thank you for joining us. And if anybody's from another district, a special welcome for you all too. All right. So for our champions, a lot of this may be some old information, but it's a good review. And then also there'll be some new updates as well. All right. So LAUSD passed a board resolution in 2022. This is now the third year of our district actually implementing the resolution. And actually the year after, in 2023, LAUSD and UTLA, in the actual contract negotiations, there was embedded an MOU that also kind of really expanded the definition of climate literacy and how our district was going to do that. And especially it even raised, and thankfully I'm very happy that this happened, it raised the differential that our climate literacy champions do or get at the school site for this amazing work. Because I know I'm the one who, I get to see all of their logs, and I know for a fact that our champions are doing well beyond what's being asked of them. So today I'm just going to talk to you about a little bit about those two, and then again, our amazing champions. And then a little kind of introduction or just a little, overview of LAUSD's climate literacy approach. And I'm sure you're going to see a strong alignment with everything that Nate said from those two documents, as well as what he's doing at his school district. So here's our board and resolution and the LAUSD UTLA MOU, Memorandum of Understanding. The board resolution really called for climate literacy to be taught across all grade levels and all curricula, all subject areas. In fact, what's really nice is last year, we kind of expanded that even more, because originally it was a UTK through 12 program. And now we have our early education preschools, able to have a champion at their school site, as well as our day schools, our adult schools. And so basically every LAUSD campus is eligible to have a climate literacy champion. So also included in the resolution is outdoor education, a climate literacy task force that is currently, we're all working on this to kind of develop recommendations, for our program in the future. And again, for me, most important, the climate literacy champions who are doing the work at the school sites with our students. And the MOU, again, further defined the task force, as well as, it included we actually now our district, and I'm really proud to say that we have this district, we have this office, we have an eco-sustainability office. And so I think that's really special. I was really surprised to hear that we were going to have this office. And so the job of this office is to ultimately take the work of all the different offices and departments and unite them to make sure that LAUSD is teaching our students climate literacy, and also making sure that our district is sustainable as well. And then also further defined climate literacy champions, which I'll go over a little bit more. And you know what? Let me make sure I'm sharing audio. I have a video I'd like to share. Okay, there we go. All right. So here's a little short video I just want to share that kind of shows you what's happening at our school sites.
Chairs and fellow delegates, recognizing how the manufacturing district causes about a third of the carbon emissions, informing the public about the effects of climate change and how consumerism has affected the amount of carbon dioxide produced.
Our goal basically is to spread awareness and to teach a lot of new delegates from elementary school, middle school, and high school how to change the world and give solutions.
This conference may be just for younger delegates, but this will help them bring solutions to our world over the course of their entire lives.
Hi, my name is Emily, and I'm a co-chair of the committee UNEP, which stands for the United Nations Environmental Program, and our topic is plastic production and pollution.
We're part of Bridgesmond, and so our committee was called CSOCD, which is the Commission for Social Development. And our topic for this conference was mitigating the effects of climate change on urban labor jobs.
So basically we made a design to solve a problem in our school for food waste.
Tinkercad basically it's a what's that? It lets you use 3D modeling software.
My name is Barry Bakeen. I'm the climate champion at North Valley Occupational Center. NVOC is one of the 11 adult schools in the Division of Adult and Career Education. One of the first tasks that the adult education climate champions took on was to create an adult school climate literacy course. You can see that we have folders for lessons and materials for our different programs, a place for adult teachers to start discussions, and as well some folders that schools can use to promote the different activities that they've done. Here's one of the actual slideshows that one of the classes produced.
Hi, my name is Karen Caruso, and this is my second year as a climate champion at 3rd Street Elementary School. We've had several school-wide events as well as class parties where it's bring your own water bottle, and we've done so with 0 plastic bottles. Next year, we're going to start a climate club for interested 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders, and I'm excited to see where that goes.
Okay, so that's just a very small snapshot of the incredible work that our climate literacy champions are doing at our schools, as well as you can see at the first school, Portola Middle School, where they have a model UN program, and that's been going on for possibly decades. And again, students are just doing some incredible work. And again, I think our teachers are preparing them truly to be ready for the world, and they're being prepared for a world that is not perfect, very complex, and it's got lots of problems. All right, so just a few quick highlights of what's happening with climate literacy. One of my favorite meetings is our collaboration meeting, where every month we meet with the champions, and they spend time kind of sharing with each other the amazing work that they're doing, asking each other questions, supporting each other, listening to each other, listening to, the struggles that they may be having to try to get everybody on board at their school sites. And so again, this is just a tiny snapshot, but, we have, a continuation high school where students, where they're actually working with tree people to form units about waste management and for around water conservation. And then we have here at Topeka Elementary School, they're using subject to climate lessons for the after school book club. And what I love about this is truly aligning to our board resolution, where they're integrating climate literacy into art, SEL, science, everything. And then many of our schools are, just like Westside Global Awareness, is extremely excited about developing composting programs at their school sites as well. All right, and so I'm going to go through this quickly, but we worked with the Broad Museum. They have an incredible exhibit going on right now called the Oaks of Tavangar, and it's about environmental reconciliation. It's about our indigenous cultures and learning from our indigenous cultures. So a lot of incredible things. And then this is just a little, little glimpses to what's coming for Earth Day. And we're actually, I should have fixed that. It's Earth Month this year. We're doing an Earth Month campaign collaboratively with DOI and ESO. And ESO being our Office of Eco-Sustainability. And then finally, our climate action clubs, we have with using our expanded learning opportunity program funding. We've been allocated over $3 million to support schools with materials as well as funding to pay teachers to run after-school climate action clubs. And for the primary grades, we have Lego Build to Change. You're going to get all the slide deck, and all of these are clickable. It'll take you to Google Drive folders with all the lessons and the curriculum there. Forward Education, which is an amazing little company in Canada that, it's one of the only companies I saw doing this, where they're integrating coding, technology, robotics, and it has an incredible library of climate literacy lessons connected to all this. And finally, the Bending the Curve, which is the Office of the President for UCOP, where they have this extensive library of college-level curriculum led by, and it has videos from, amazing environmental scientists who are, teaching, college students. Well, we just signed the licensing agreement that will allow LAUSD to take all of that, put it into our learning management system, Schoology, so that it's available for teachers and champions to learn from, and also possibly even embed some of this material into their high school curriculum, or even across other grades as well, possibly. And then, hopefully next year, we're going to actually work with UCOP to develop some courses utilizing this curriculum for our high schools. All right. And I do want to get through this quickly because I know we have a lot of good stuff, for especially for our LAUC champions here. Okay, so as Nate mentioned as well, LAUSD, again, one of the first things that, that we really want to make sure that doesn't happen is that, climate literacy should not be about just dumping information onto our students, right? Where it's just, they're, again, it's all doom and gloom, and they're just, and it doesn't do anything good, right? It just builds anxiety, eco-anxiety. And so we even have had multiple PDs from our SEO department that focuses on eco-anxiety and climate literacy. And then also, and again, a big component of this, and Nate said this before as well, is action. It's service learning. When students are given an opportunity to take part, then it's amazing what they can do. And then here you can see our 6 competencies. And if you take a look at these, self-awareness, self-management, self-efficacy, responsible decision-making, growth mindset, social awareness, all of these things are integral parts of climate literacy. When students are working on real-world problems, such as climate change, they are doing all of this and they're developing these competencies. All right, I'm going to quote through this quickly, but so here, this is kind of a guiding quote, for our LAUSD program. Tell me and I forget, teach me and I may remember, involve me and I learn. Again, for so long when I was a first-year teacher, or a beginning teacher, I thought my job was to transfer as much of my knowledge into my students as possible. And as the more I transfer to them, the more effective I am as a teacher. And then later I realized it wasn't getting through, and the efficiency wasn't so great. But then when I realized that instead of looking at my students as the object of my teaching, and instead focusing on their learning, and then by involving them in real relevant projects, some incredible things happen. And so, this is all part of a PD that I gave in the summer. and it was why real world problems, right? And they build empathy, but it's not just an emotional empathy. It's also a cognitive empathy where, students have to be able, in order to be able to, to design solutions for real world problems, they need to take themselves out of their perspective and put themselves in the perspective of those being affected by the problem, so that they can develop a solution that works for that group, for the people affected, right? And that kind of empathy is an incredible, rigorous empathy, and it builds rigor. It's cognitively demanding, but it also then again, we have the emotional part as well. And so rigor, of course, context. My favorite thing to hear from my students, when I was a beginning teacher was, Mr. Song, why do I need to learn this, right? Because we teach so many things out of context. But when we teach it in the context of real world problems, then kids don't ask why do I need to learn this? And instead they ask, teacher, I'm stuck. I'm trying to develop a solution for this and I can't get to the next stage because I'm missing this information or this skill. What do I do, right? And then again, the cultural, this cultural responsiveness, I'm not going to go into it right now since I think Nate's already done it. Empowerment, our students become empowered in realizing that they can make an impact on the world. And finally, sustainable development goals. The UN goals, have been kind of a wonderful foundation to the real world problem-based learning that our students are doing. And they realize that they are part of a community, a local community, but also a global community. All right, I talked way too much, and I'm going to hand it over to Ruth to share with us Seeds to Solutions, which I know many of our climate literacy champions are extremely excited about.
And I'm going to jump in for just a second here, and we're going to have Ronnie take it off, but I'm just going to let everybody know we're going to go a little bit long. There's so much good stuff to share here, but this is the payoff here. Here are the tools you can use to do all of this great work. And so we're going to go into our discussion time a little bit to make sure that Ronnie gets time to give her full presentation. So stay with us if you can. If not, we are recording this. Go ahead, Ronnie.
Great, thanks, Tim. I actually have quite a few slides, but some of my slides are extra that are just additional information that you all can review on your own time. But thank you so much for having me. Tim and Nate, thanks for inviting me. And Jerry, it's really nice to present alongside you. I think some of the information that you're going to hear from me is kind of banging the same drum as most of the presenters today. You're going to hear a lot of the same themes, which is great for us at Seeds to Solutions. So as Tim said, my name is Ronnie Jones and I'm the Director of Curriculum at 10 Strands. We'll give more information about 10 Strands in the link that's in the chat if you would like to do that. Thank you, Paulina, for dropping that in. I appreciate it. We at 10 Strands have been working in partnership with the San Mateo County Office of Education for the last going on 3 years now, to develop kindergarten through 12th grade curriculum to support climate change and environmental justice lessons in your classrooms. So I'm going to go through some of these slides fairly quickly, but again, they are available for you to be able to review as needed. So if you could go to the next slide. This goes without saying, right? Our students are aware of what's happening in our communities. They understand some of the impacts of climate change that we're seeing. They are seeing increased temperatures. In some of our schools, students have been out of school because there may not be air conditioning, or there may be smoke days where they can't go outside, and all of those kinds of things. Students have been seeing news reports and everything about what's happening with our climate. And as previous presenters have said, we really need to attend to what students are wondering and thinking about all of these things, and then also support them emotionally and socially so that they can actually see themselves as part of the solution to this. So next slide. So obviously, we know that not all teachers have access to materials. The examples that you've seen today from LUSD and from Fremont are incredible and amazing, but there are also some districts who maybe don't have dedicated staff who are working on this kind of content, who are helping teachers to understand how to teach about climate change, what some of the resources are that they need and that their students need in order to understand these concepts, understand their role and their agency within climate change, and then really, put themselves forward. The video, Jerry, that you showed of students was just incredible. Like, if we could have all students speak so eloquently about what they would like to do and how they would like to contribute to our world, is just amazing. So next slide. So we've been working on this, like I said, for about the last 3 years. We're coming to a soft launch of these curriculum materials in March. And California has really invested in this. We have been receiving state funding for this time in order to create these materials that are available for free to all teachers in California. Next slide, please. So these materials are supplemental. So they are not meant to supplant any of the curriculum or any of the resources that you have. You could maybe raise your hands or indicate in the chat, but many of you probably have used the EEI curriculum in the past, and the Education and the Environment Initiative curriculum was also supplemental. So it meets state standards without sort of taking the place of all of the other curriculum that you have. In many cases, our curriculum is meant to enhance and add on to areas of the curriculum where climate change maybe is not currently addressed within the curriculum that you have, but it feels like it's a really great place for it to be addressed. All of our curriculum is standards aligned, and it's either 15 hours or about 15 class sessions. We realize that 15 hours of instruction at kindergarten is a very long time. So we actually adapted some of our lower grades to be more like 15 class sessions for teachers to be able to implement. And I think, I can't remember the presenter, but somebody was talking about how understanding climate change and environmental justice is really interdisciplinary. So our units actually are meant to be taught across multiple subject areas. And I'll go into that a little bit when I give you a preview of our units. To echo what everybody else has said, actually, if you could go to the next slide, it was really interesting when I was doing a planning call with Nate. He showed me this slide. These guidelines were actually developed simultaneously to us developing our curriculum, but most of our curriculum actually aligns with these key characteristics. So I was really excited to see this. I've had my head down and copy editing and proofreading, so I hadn't seen that this had come out. And so we're really excited to know that our curriculum does align in these ways. So let me give you a quick preview of what we have been working on. So first, next slide. We have chosen to use a storyline model for our curriculum. And so you'll see here that just if any of you are using the Open SciEd science units, the storyline has these specific sections that teachers work through. And it's really meant to ensure that students are able to investigate at every stage, that students are making observations, they are bringing their prior knowledge, and that the curriculum is coherent from their perspective, right? So the curriculum is actually designed around student questions and not necessarily about teachers pushing the standards of like, this is what you should do, and then you should do this next. We really worked hard to try to present these anchoring experiences, which is the first lesson, which might be several sessions within the unit, so that we could understand what are the questions that students have about these different topics. And then we geared the curriculum to try to answer those questions. So if you just, it's not the next slide, but go ahead and forward so that it animates here. So for example, in our first grade unit, we have students looking at food waste. And so there are several ways that students can look at food waste. One is that we have a set of slides that students could look at and examine and ask questions about the kind of food waste that you're seeing here. Or we offer the option and opportunity where teachers could visit actually their cafeteria and look at the kind of food waste that's there. Once students actually get a sense of what are the kinds of things that they are seeing that are being thrown away, and some of your districts have really robust composting programs. Other districts don't, right? So we're really offering the opportunity for students to start where they're at and ask questions about that. But go ahead and forward one more. But along the way, students develop a model of what's happening with food waste from their perspective once they actually decide that they don't want to eat something. And so again, in some cases, students will be able to investigate what are the composting and trash options at their school site. If things go into a compost bin, what happens to those things? If they go into the trash bin, what happens to those things? And students really do a deep dive in an investigation so that by the end, they actually also understand who are the people that make a difference. That's a big theme in first grade, right? Is people who make a difference. And then at the end, we have added kind of a little twist on this storyline model. Most of the Open SciEd units end with a consensus model building lesson where students finish their final model. But we have a final lesson where teachers can actually now take everything that they've learned and help students take action in some way. And so we've offered options for teachers depending on how much time they have. If they just have a day or two, there's an option that within the lesson plan where teachers can do sort of a lower lift sort of lesson to finish up, or they could do a deep dive. If you're a project-based learning school, you could really dive deeply into this and have students really take action around whatever the topic is. Next slide. These next 4 slides, I'm not going to go over them because you can actually read it. I hate it when presenters read text to me from slides, so I'm not going to read all this to you. You can go back and look at it. But basically, we have 4 different lesson types that teachers will teach. The units always start with an anchor experience, which is a shared common experience where students ask questions. They create a driving question board or a notice and wonder chart for our lower grades, and then they create an initial explanatory model. And so this is the opportunity for teachers to understand, what do students already think and know about this topic, maybe what some of their misconceptions are before you start to dive into, next slide, the investigation lessons. So throughout the rest of the unit, there are anywhere from say 5 to 7 investigation lessons where students have a lesson level question that they're investigating. And then they try to figure out things at every stage in every lesson. And then just like a jigsaw puzzle, they start to put the pieces together, next slide, until they finally get to the consensus model building lesson. And so in this consensus model building lesson, they bring all the pieces of their learning together and create a final model. Now, again, a lot of science instruction ends here, but in our model, we tried to ask, well, so what? So what if you understand composting and trash? So what if you understand what happens to groundwater and subsidence? Next slide. We want students to actually engage in potential solutions, to understand some sort of purpose of how they might contribute and how might they share their learning in addition to how might they share action. And so in some cases, they design solutions. In other cases, they might continue to gather information and understand, say, a political process or a process for being able to propose solutions to a school board or to a city council. Again, it's slightly dependent on how much time teachers have to invest, but we really want to ensure that these are student-generated solutions that ensure equitable participation. And so that's one of our goals with this curriculum. Next slide. So here's a preview of some of our topics. I'm going to let you sort of take a look at these. You can see it was really funny when Nate was sharing with me in our planning session, like, hey, look at these 2 covers and see how they're different. And one was really science-based, and now the new version has a lot of people. You'll notice that our covers actually include students in many cases, because we want students to be able to see themselves in this curriculum. Can you go to the next slide, please? And we really wanted to make sure that, that they also saw the diversity within California and how diverse communities might experience climate change in different ways. Next slide. You'll also see that some of our themes that we have here align, I think, with what Nate was sharing about how they are thinking about their different grade level bands. So we were very aware in our K-3 space that we didn't really want to scare students, right? We really wanted to give them hope. We wanted to help teachers have strategies to support the social emotional well-being of their students. And many of our units actually use the climate mental health emotion wheel. So Paulina, if you could drop that in, that's on our document. So if you're looking for a way to support students' emotions around climate change, I think this is a great resource, and we have used this throughout our units to help teachers really help students identify what emotions they're feeling and then how can they deal with those. Next slide. What else did I want to say about our units? Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Oh, also, we've had really diverse communities help contribute to these units. We had a lot of community organizations contribute. Those community organizations were either diverse themselves or they maybe worked with other communities who are going to be disproportionately impacted by climate change. We were lucky enough to work with some indigenous communities. We worked with the Yokut people who are in the Central Valley to help us understand how land subsidence is impacting them and impacting the Central Valley overall. And the Karuk contributed to our fifth grade unit around wildfires and helping our students to understand cultural burns as a part of a way to manage fire risk here in California. Next slide. And you'll see that our 9th through 12th grade units really help students to engage in research. The topics really are pulling in a lot more complexity. So students are really ready for that once they get to those high school levels. And again, helping students to take action in some way as they engage in research and conduct case studies. All right, next slide. So these are on target to be released. We have a soft release coming up here in March. In order to qualify to meet the state requirements for the work that we've done, we have to release all of the units by March 31st. So there will be a soft launch of the units. Paulina just dropped in a link for you. If you would like to get more information about our units, please feel free to sign up to our newsletter. We will not bombard you with a bunch of other stuff. These are just updates about our Seeds to Solution program, so feel free to do that. Also, thanks to many teachers across California, we had over 100 teachers participate in our field test. From last spring all the way through this fall, we had 17 teachers from LAUSD, so thank you LAUSD. You were our largest district that contributed to feedback for these units. And teachers are really excited about them, so we're really excited to release them. Next slide. We know that this is a new topic for many teachers. I think, Nate, you were talking about how we don't have support in every district for teachers to be able to teach about these topics. Parents didn't necessarily learn about this topic in school, right? So you have parents out there who maybe don't understand why this is important within the scope of history, social science education, art, English language arts, any of those topics, right? So we are planning a statewide rollout to introduce teachers to these materials and to train them to incorporate these materials into their classroom. So look for more information coming on that. Next slide. All right, and there's my email. If there's anything that you need, if you'd like to reach out, we are a little busy getting our final copy editing and proofreading done. If anybody's ever done that level of work, you know how complicated it is. We have to clear all of our assets and make sure that we're not violating copyright, all of those kinds of things. But I love to hear from teachers who are excited to implement these resources. And they will be coming out, like I said, March 31st, the website will go live. We will continue to make improvements on the website and with all of the materials through the spring into summer so that we will probably have at least 2 cycles of improvement before the school year starts in August and September of 2025. So we would love for you to jump in there, be an early user, give us feedback and suggestions in order to improve that work. So I'll stop there. It's about 10 after, but I'll stay around and answer any questions. And we're really excited to have all of you start to use these materials.
All right. Thank you so much. It's so exciting to hear about the good work that's happening. And I've been waiting for the Seeds to Solutions to come out. So I'm excited to see this hit our classrooms. If we can go to the next slide, please. So I love our webinar series because we get to hear about great work happening out in our school districts. So thank you today to Nate and Jerry sharing the great work that's happening in Fremont and LA Unified. And here's a time for you can either appreciate, reflect, share a commitment, but put something in the chat if you feel so moved. And if there's something that you have questions about or something that you're saying to yourself, hey, this is what my next step is, put it in the chat. We're going to give you a chance to actually talk about this as well here in just a minute when we put you in breakout rooms. But thank you so much to our 3 presenters today. I learned a lot. I'm sure everyone else did as well. And let's move to the next slide. One more, please. So we're continuing to try to up our game. We have been doing webinar series now, I think, for 3 years, and get lots of great feedback from people, and that just helps us do better. So if you've got something you'd like to add, or you want to say a shout out to somebody that presented today or something, please contact us at Paulina's email address there. And we've got a feedback form as well. So use that, give us some feedback, and now we're going to jump into some breakout rooms. Oh, wait, I think we have a few. Next slide, please, Jerry. Yes, we do have a few Cali announcements. So we do have a California Green Ribbon School Achievers and Applicants Network meeting. If you are thinking about Green Ribbon for next year, if you're talking about it from this year and wondering what your next step might be, this is a great place to meet with others and to meet with George Garcia and people from around the state that can help you do this work. So that is coming up on February 27th. And then March 27th, we already have our next webinar planned, and that is going to be around Green Schoolyards America. So it's going to be another exciting one. You can register here. We'll put it in the chat. Now let's jump into our breakout rooms. So we're going to put some breakout rooms for each of our 3 speakers. I think Nate is going to be in breakout room 1. I believe Jerry will be in 2 and Ronnie will be in 3. And so they'll just be there to answer questions. You can jump around, I believe, if you would like. So Paulina's got all that. So all the rooms are open. Please feel free to jump in there if you'd like to discuss any of this in greater detail. Thank you so much for everyone for joining us today. We'll do a closeout at the very end at 5:30. But if some of you don't have time to stay on, I want to thank you for being here. And please come back next month. It's going to be another exciting topic. All right, go to the breakout rooms.
Hi, Tim. This is Ronnie. Can you tell me again what my breakout room was? I missed it.
I think you're in 3.
Thank you.